Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the St. Tammany Parish Zoning Commission. Today is Tuesday, July 7th, 2015. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Casaubon? Here. Mr. Loren? Here. Mr. Richardson? Here. Mr. Richard? Here. Mr. Willie? Mr. Manila?
Here.
Mr. Matthews? Here. Mr. Davis? Here. Mr. Doherty? Here. Mr. Drum? Here. Mr. Randolph? Here. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Announcements. At this time, we would ask that you please silence all phones and electronic devices. If you wish to appeal any of the recommendations of this commission, appeals cards are to our right. If you wish to speak in front of the commission, we respectfully ask that you fill out a speaker's card so we have it for our records. Each side will be given 10 minutes to either for or against the case, with 5 minutes for rebuttal. And if you wish to speak of the case afterwards, we would ask that you leave the building, as if you go back into the back lobby area, it does echo back into the chamber. This time I would ask everyone to stand, and Commissioner Randolph to lead us in an invocation, and Commissioner Casaubon to lead us in a pledge.
Gracious Father, we want to take out this time now to say thank you for all the blessings you bestowed in our lives. Lord, we thank you for this parish. We thank you for this commission. We thank you for all those that are represented here tonight. And gracious Father, help us to make the decision that's in the best interest of those involved. In all these blessings, we ask in your Son, Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would ask Commissioner Matthews wishes to make a comment, a point of personal privilege.
A couple of Saturdays ago, we had our annual training session, and Neil Hall was here and gave the predominant part of that training session to us. Neil Hall was the former attorney for the Zoning Commission and Planning Commission, and he gave an excellent session. I think we all that were in attendance learned a great deal, and I want to publicly thank Neil Hall for doing it. I know he put a lot into it, you could tell, and we learned a lot from it. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd also like to thank Sydney for coordinating all of that to ensure that, again, to ensure that this Board of Commissioners is compliant, that we have ongoing training, and that was fulfilled, I believe, our obligation, though many of us continue to have ongoing training to ensure that we are fulfilling not only our requirement, but our responsibility to the public. Thank you for that, Bill. At this time, in our packages, we have the June 2nd, 2015 meeting minutes. Are there any comments regarding those? Commissioner Matthews?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Matthews, second by Commissioner Davis. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I ask for a vote. Motion carries. Postponement of cases. Staff?
No request.
No postponement. This is a public hearing. The public is encouraged to speak on each case if you wish to do so, for or against. Zoning change request cases. Applications for a proposed change of zoning districts or amendments to the land use ordinance requiring review and recommendation of approval by the Zoning Commission before action by the Parish Council are as follows. ZC 15-07-053, existing zoning A2 Suburban District. Proposed zoning HC2 Highway Commercial District. The parcel 5.229 acres. The petitioner, council motion. The owner, Edsel and Anita Jones. The parcel is located on the southeast corner of Weimer Road and Williams Road, west of Louisiana Highway 437, Lee Road, being 19416 Weimer Road, Covington, Ward 3, District 2. Staff?
The 2025 Future Land Use Plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. Staff does not see any compelling reason to recommend approval, considering that the site is mostly surrounded by residential uses with the exception of the abutting fire station and the existing office warehouse located on the site. At this time, staff would like to recommend denial.
Is there anyone for the petitioner that's in the audience? Please come forward, state your name and address.
My name is Edsel Jones, Jr. My mom and dad were owners of the property since the late or mid-'70s. I'm not sure. They sold off a parcel to the fire station, and it's basically been commercial forever. He bought it from First National Bank years ago. They made trash bags in it. My dad had an air conditioning business in it for 40 years or what have you. And he has since deceased a year and a half ago, and the building's just been kind of sitting there with storage of cars, just stuff left over, but we're just trying to get it rezoned to commercial so we can have some income for my mom. I don't know why it got, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for the rezoning? Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the rezoning? Please, we have a card for Mr. Foltz. If you would please come to the podium. And again, if you would state your name and address for the record.
My name is Gregory Foltz. I live at 75093 Williams, adjacent to the property in question here. I'd like to point out that I'm familiar with that area. I was a volunteer fireman, and that Weimer Road Fire Department came into existence when I was a volunteer with them back in the 80s. And I understand his compunction to do something with the property. It's dilapidated right now. There's some big problems with the area, I know. But I want to make sure that what we get to replace it is not worse than what we have right now. And as you know, the traffic in that area is not a good intersection. I think if you do some statistics, you'll see that that intersection by Spell's Grocery and Weimer and Planche and Lee Road is a constant source of accidents. And let me point out that my wife's father was killed in a car wreck along with her uncle and her aunt, and her mother was severely injured because development was allowed, but the infrastructure was not kept pace with the development. And so the traffic controls were inferior. Next thing you know, she lost her dad. So people get killed on Lee Road all the time. I would also like to point out that when that property was commercial back then, that there weren't as many residential houses back there as there are now. So what we've had is a change in the general flavor of the area. At one time it was commercial, and I understand that. Highway commercial, I don't understand at all why that would even be considered. I picture Industry Lane off of Highway 36. Are you familiar with that? That's what I picture going in there. But you'll notice there are no residential subdivisions being serviced by Industry Lane. So you're not melding industrial, wholesale pickup, delivery. These guys are in a hurry. They got to make a living. They got to get across Lee Road one way or the other. And it's not going to be a good situation. We're going to have a big traffic jam. You can't put two trucks side by side there. So truck passing truck wouldn't work. They have to improve Weimer Road. You'd have to put a left turn lane in, possibly even a signal light to make that a safe area to accommodate this growth. And so the area has changed. There's a lot of houses back there now. I don't know the exact number. But I'm right across the street from it on the side, and I just bought the house last year. I'd hate to see it, devalued because it's now in a commercial area. We like the house. We like it a lot, and we're working very hard to fix it up. I think you'll find that your initial reaction was correct, that it should be denied. At the very least, I would recommend a lot of studies about traffic deaths and traffic in that area and the ability to get in and out of that subdivision. Also, the infrastructure of how wide is the road? Is there drainage sufficient for all that asphalt coming in? But perhaps our petitioner would reconsider and maybe consider dividing it into some nice residential lots. I'm sure he could sell them. That's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come to the podium, sir.
I apologize for not having a card. I didn't know where they were and didn't know such a thing existed either, so.
We'll make you fill in if you'll state
I'll
your
be
name and
brief.
address.
I live directly across the street from the air conditioning building, as we still call it. I actually live behind his house, which is directly across the street. My house is 8 years old. His is 10 or 12.
Excuse me, sir,
The
if
one
you'd
to his
state
right
your
is-
name and address.
My name is Richard Mermilliot, I beg your pardon, and I'm at 19405 Weimer.
Thank you.
I'm not prepared to stand here and say don't, but I'd sure like to know what he's going to do with it. If he's going to have a goat slaughterhouse over there, I'd just soon he went somewhere else. If it's going to reopen as an air conditioning place like it was before, that's no harm. I don't have anything to say about the man making a living. My concern is what's going to be there, what generally would be permitted by Highway C2. I'm sure you can't have a goat slaughterhouse, but from what I read, you're talking convenience store or a gas station. Not back there. There's no way. As the gentleman said, Weimer Road is quite narrow. If you pass a school bus coming up, school bus pulls over to the side. I would if they didn't. There's no way you could both pass and moving. It's a very, very narrow road. And the corner we used to refer to as Dead Man's Corner, which is dark humor, I would imagine, but that is a dangerous corner. You learn to look to the right before you turn right because somebody's going to be passing and they're a four-wheel drive diesel pickup truck because they got tired of following grandma. It's a lovely corner, and if there's going to be commercial vehicles coming in and out of there, we may never get out of there if we're stuck behind a bunch of trucks. And again, my whole thing is, what are they going to do with it? What's going to be there? I don't care what it's zoned. I don't care if it stays commercial. I care about what that commercial enterprise is going to be. That's it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who also wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, Mr. Jones, would you care to rebut?
I wasn't really prepared for this situation, but it's not as they purport it to be. I mean, if y'all are familiar with Weimer Road, it's a good distance from here. The intersection is dangerous on Weimer Road. It has nothing to do with the building and area that we're talking about. It's a small mom and pop building. It's not dilapidated. It's central air offices, 5 or 6 offices in the front, warehouse in the back. I put a new roof on it after Katrina. Redid the back end side of it. So it's in good shape for a small mom and pop business. It's not going to be IBM or Walmart in there. It's just a small piece of property with that has good potential for a small mom and pop company, air conditioning, electrical, somebody. It will be a hard lease, but no, we're not going to have a pig slaughter or anything like that. It's just going to be something to make good use of the building. Thank you.
Would anyone from the opposition wish to make any further statement? If not, at this time, we're going to close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, a question for staff. This property was never zoned commercial, is that correct? Before the A2 zoning on our rezoning, it was suburban agriculture, is that correct?
Suburban or rural, yeah.
Okay, so it was actually never zoned for highway commercial or C2 back
No.
when we had it. Okay, looking at the property itself, I went out there and looking at the residential areas, I have to agree with the staff on this one. I just don't have a compelling reason to make this highway commercial too. That's a pretty high commercialization for this area. And opposite of what I believe it was Mr. Vermillion that came up and says, I don't care what it's zoned. I actually do care what it's zoned because it's the zoning that issues what's going to be built there, or one of the possibilities. So with that being said, I make a motion to deny.
A motion by Commissioner Davis to deny, a second by Commissioner Dougherty. Commissioner Matthews.
Mr. Mr. Jones, would you come up a second? I have a couple of questions for you. There appear to be a couple of other buildings on this property. Can you tell me what those are?
There's a fifth wheel camper on one side in the parking area and a trailer in the other side of the mobile home on the other side of the building.
Well, this property goes all the way down to Williams. It looks like there's a residence between what appears to be the commercial building and Williams.
To be honest, I don't even know where Williams. I assume Williams is one street past the property we're talking about.
Yeah, this property appears to be on the corner of Williams and Weimer.
Well,
Do you see did he give you the aerial photo?
I see it, but I can't.
It has a
look at
number on it, 19421.
Correct. Okay. And where they're saying there's a mobile home right here.
You're referring to the one in the back of Buddy?
It has a number on it, 19421. Can you tell me what that is?
That's the building in question.
What's the next building to the right?
That's the fire station.
That's the fire station? Mm-hmm. The fire station's on this property? No, the fire station abuts this property. I think the fire station, correct me if I'm wrong, is on the other side of Williams.
The legal description that was given to us was a 5-acre parcel of land as it's drawn on the.
Okay, and I don't disagree with that, but the fire station, I thought the fire station was on the other side. Okay, well, the fire station's on this property?
Well,
The fire station's
Unless if
on your
it's-
property?
No,
unless if it's been sold, but that's the legal description that was provided to us.
Well, I'm not sure what we're going to be deciding on then. If the fire station is on the property, then that changes a whole lot of things. But if the fire station is not on his property, then we can't rezone what I'm looking at.
My understanding it's not on. I think my dad sold that parcel of land to the parish or the fire station or
And
whoever.
I'd make a motion to postpone this until we can figure out what in the heck we're looking at. And I'm not saying you all have the wrong description. What you were given probably is this. But I don't think that's what we're being asked to rezone.
This is what was submitted to us from the council.
And I'm not denying that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think somehow we've gotten our wires crossed.
Mr. Matthews, would you like to make a motion to postpone?
I did, I thought.
Yep. We have a motion by Mr. Matthews to postpone. Second by Commissioner Richardson. Commissioner Casabon?
Am I allowed to ask questions?
No, unless it's
Nah.
relative to the postponement.
Nah. I just had some
Okay, we have a motion.
questions I needed answered.
We have a motion to postpone, and it is seconded. Is there any further discussion on postponement? If not, I would ask to vote. Motion to postpone until next meeting has passed. Thank you. ZC 15-07-054, existing zoning, NC4 Neighborhood Institutional District and A3 Suburban District. Proposed zoning, HC2 Highway Commercial District. The parcel, 1.97 acres. Petitioner, council motion. The owner, Ernest M. Anthony. The parcel is located on the north side of US Highway 190, east of K Drive, Ward 9, District 11. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the site to be developed with commercial uses. Staff does not see any compelling reason to increase the intensity of the zoning in the area, At this time, staff would like to recommend denial of the request. Note that the property was zoned C2 highway commercial before the comprehensive rezoning.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the council motion? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public. I bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Dougherty.
Mr. Chairman, since no one's here to speak either for or against on this particular item, I'd move to postpone to the next meeting and ask staff to notify Mr. Anthony that he needs to appear at next month's meeting.
I'll second that, and with a comment, I have some questions about this. This is not just cut and dry, so we really need somebody here to talk to.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dougherty to postpone, a second by Commissioner Matthews. Is there any questions relative to the postponement of the commission? Hearing none, I would ask for a vote. Motion for postponement till next meeting carries. ZC 15-07-055, text change. Ordinance to amend St. Tammany Parish Unified Development Code, Volume 1 zoning, to add on-location television or film productions as an administrative permit. Staff?
Mr. Chairman, what you have in front of you is 10 pages that does two things. Essentially, historically, what we've done in St. Tammany Parish is somebody wanting to do television or film production contacts either the Tourist Bureau or some other entity and ends up with our Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. If they're just doing a shoot, say, on a street, on some easily accessible property for a day or two, that office contacts the sheriff's office, fire departments, whatever's necessary based upon the shoot. If there are going to be explosions, they're going to have to have fire marshal. I think it requires a state fire marshal. If they're going to be running a car chase, they're going to have the sheriff's office, have the street blocked off, that type of thing. We have had a couple of situations where somebody wanted to come in and actually build a structure. And the first and probably the most contentious was a production that came in 60 days before production and wanted to build a structure that would house people for a 6-week period of time in a single-family residential district. This was a very isolated single-family residential, probably would not have been an issue in that neighborhood, but we could not allow the permitting of that structure because it was a single-family residential district and did not want to create the issue of somebody going in and being able to go into a more occupied area. So it was something that we struggled with. We've also had a situation fairly recently where somebody wanted to come in and actually just put sets in a single-family residential district. Probably wouldn't have been a problem, wouldn't require state fire marshal approval. And so what we decided to do is try to set up a situation based upon whether or not building permits were needed, whether or not it was going to be a permanent structure, to give us some guidance on how to handle the zoning situation. Essentially what you have here in all districts, and you can see it in the E1, this goes throughout all of the zoning districts. If you have an on-location television or film production where no sets are constructed that require permits, so if it's a false front, if it's a small structure to look like in the last potential movie that we dealt with was to look like a train station, but it would never be occupied, it would not have electricity, it would not have plumbing, it was just a structure. That under the International Building Code would not require a building permit. We would allow that, and then the structure would have to be removed when the filming was completed. That would be allowed in all the districts. So, essentially the situation we have now with most filming, they would just be allowed. We would know where they're going to be, we know what they're doing, we would not require building permits. In those situations where a structure needs to be constructed that would require a building permit, it would not be allowed in the residential districts. If they're going into an existing residence to do a filming of a reality or show or something that doesn't require any modifications to the structure, they would be able to go in there and do that. That was not the purpose of this. That's a decision. If somebody wants to make it another time, they can make it another time as to how we regulate that. Very few communities regulate that. if it is something that requires a building permit, it is only allowed in the commercial districts and the specialized districts, and it has to meet the zoning of the district. So in essence, we've tried to separate it, protect the residential areas as much as we can from any extended filming that could disrupt the neighborhood for an extended period of time. And on any commercial areas, they would just have to make sure they meet building code. Or if it is a building that's going to be built and the owner wants to keep the structure, we have to make sure that it meets building codes for the safety of future tenants, future users of that structure. And so that's essentially what it does. It identifies those two things and sets the parameters by which we'd be able to sign off on the building permits.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. Caller Hernandez. You know, just for your information, I know most of you, many of you, I usually get access to this information a week before the meeting. Unfortunately for me, at least my computer was unable to bring up the agenda items for this meeting. I was able to get this earlier today, and I have several questions. You know, it's interesting what he was saying about the issuance of permits only in commercial areas. And I'd just like to read what it says here. On location, television, or film productions, plural, where any set structures requiring the issuance of a building permit as determined by the chief building official or assigned are permitted when the set structure meets all applicable codes of the relevant zoning district. You know, there's one thing for the building itself to meet the code. We all know about setbacks and all the other requirements here, but then are we also talking about that it also has to be within then the permitted uses within that district? Is that because it's not clear to me that you could have you could have something that's not permitted because it's associated with this filming of the a train station. It's not something that's that's in many areas except one, I think, one district that it's in. So I guess something like that, and when you have, let's say, like the explosions that you have, I mean, we don't have any criteria as to when we're going to permit explosions and how far back from, let's say, existing property lines that they have to be, or it needs to meet the state fire marshal. Okay, well, let's hope the state fire marshal has a good hand on how far some of these things can go on being meeting the projectiles that are sometimes associated with some of these productions, and it's interesting that now every zoning district now has permitted these so-called administrative permits. Before it was essentially the residential and then some commercial, but now everyone does. And there's one, just for your information, there's one zoning district that I'm not aware of that exists right now, even though it's on paper, and that's the Riverboat Gambling District. And that one has, and the best part is that is the one district that is probably has the most language in it. It has pages and pages of stuff, and now it's going to be adding on this other couple of things that's going to be on there, which and I know that, maybe one day there will be a gaming district, and therefore it is good to be able to have all of these various things in place at the time prior to it. But the other thing too is I'm wondering why there wasn't any consideration given to having these so-called minimum requirements, because many of the other uses that are associated with some of these other administrative permits have criteria for what it takes in order for this thing to exist properly. And that no such consideration was given to that, and I'm wondering why not. And should we, in fact, have some criteria in terms of, whatever, setbacks or something for, for having this? Is it because it's in every district and every district has a different one? Well, I guess that would be one consideration. But one of the other things could be that maybe if we're going to have explosions associated with this filming, that maybe we should have some kind of, setback requirements besides just having the state fire marshal give approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak on the recommended change? If not, at this time, I'll close it to the public, and I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Casabon?
Yes, doesn't state fire marshal precede anything that we do? We'd have to follow their ordinances.
Well, they have their ordinances they enforce. This
Right.
was not intended to address some of the issues that Mr. Hernandez spoke about. It is very narrowly written. It is narrowly written to allow us to process requests for some type of structure, sets, permanent structures, whatever it falls in, and set parameters, which we did not have. They have been filming in St. Tammany Parish for many years. They have a process that they go through. The Department of Development does not administer that process. This is a portion of that process that has come up on a number of times for us to handle. If the council wishes to indulge in the process of making setbacks, trying to govern those types of things, that's within their purview to do that. We are addressing how we need to handle potential building permits from a zoning perspective.
Correct. And I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve. Second by Commissioner Richard. Commissioner Davis.
Cindy, my question is, who actually oversees this on the parish side? Do these movie people come in and actually say, we want to build something? How do we know this?
A lot of times they'll come in and they'll look for the either Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, or they'll come to the Tourist Bureau, and then they'll be referred to the Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, and they'll kind of that department will coordinate with a number of entities. Within each city, it's handled differently. You know, we do not review the stuff going into Covington or into Mandeville, which is where a lot of the filming takes place. We have had a car chase down Lake Road. We've had stuff in the last year. We have had a situation with helicopters and car chase on one of the Singletary roads. I can't remember which one it is. But you know, it's something that they set up. They do a few hours of filming, and they move on. And so we did research how other communities handle it, and very few go this far. They basically, you coordinate with law enforcement and fire departments, and you go and do your filming.
But is there a possibility of falling outside of the loop, though, and not even knowing what's happening, and all of a sudden something happens?
There's always that possibility. If they're doing something that of the scale that we're talking about, where they're doing a car chase and they haven't contacted local government, somebody has a large liability. If they're filming in somebody's front yard where they're not blocking traffic and they're not using helicopters and they're not doing explosions, there's no gunfight, and then, you know, that's a different story. We don't necessarily have to be involved in that. But when they are going to set up a tent for a dozen people to live in for a 6-week period in a residential district, that's the first time it came up to us. And we said, you can't do it. And they were going to film overnight. So they would be filming all night, potentially, in that particular area.
Okay, I only say this because about a year and a half ago, I was on Bayou Lacombe, and they were filming the Abraham Lincoln, the Vampire Hunter. Mm-hmm. And they had built a dock in the water on Bayou Lacombe and a beautiful shed area for that. None of that has to be built to code, correct?
That would not have to be built to code, and according to this, they would just have to come in, fill out an administrative permit, let us know what they're doing.
And then when they left, they took it all down.
Yeah, as long as it's all coming down, nobody's going to occupy it as an office. You know, you could see somebody, you know, I own a commercial piece of property, and they want to put up a, 5,000-6,000 square foot building to do something. I don't want to tear that down if I have a commercial piece of property necessarily. That would have to follow code, have to be building code and everything. That's the intent of this. If they're going to put something up, they talked about, there was a Western, they were going to use the trace, run a steam engine over here just outside of Slidell near the mall, but it's in a residential area that's heavily wooded. They were just going to put up a wood frame building, nothing inside. They were going to store equipment in there overnight, maybe 2 nights. That would not require a building permit. There would be minimum structure, and then they would come in, they'd do their shoot, and remove it.
Okay, but if the movie production company made a deal with this landowner and said you can keep everything after we built it, then it would have to be built to code.
Yes.
is that simplified here indirectly? I'm just trying to understand.
In a commercial, it is.
Yeah.
In a residential, it says it has to be of temporary nature. They want to build a barn,
They can't,
it's temporary, or you have to come in for a code, and you're just building a barn, and then they're going to shoot there.
okay.
If the company is building something, is building a set, that's what we're looking at. It. We were getting in a situation where they wanted to put up a temporary set, and we were saying, you have to meet building code. Well, it's going to be up for 4 days. You know,
No, I understand the process. I just wanted to see if anybody's overseeing all this.
If they do, yeah, any structure that's built on a property will have to meet code unless you have this administrative permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Matthews?
Yeah, Sydney, in a residential area, they can put up a temporary set. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. How temporary is temporary?
That's a question that, since this was written, we've come across in another situation, and we probably ought to visit that. And the problem is that it's a relative term.
Well, but, you know, I can see.
So we may want to look at a time period. I understand the question.
Yeah, because I can see where they build a barn.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nobody living in it. There's no electricity. There's no plumbing. It's temporary. Okay. And I have it on my piece of property. And, hell, that's a very nice barn. Can y'all leave it? Well, it's going to cost me to tear it down, so I'm going to leave it. Well, it ain't temporary. It's permanent. And it's in a residential area. What about the guy that has the house next door? They've built something there with
that
no
doesn't meet
public
code.
hearing.
Yeah, we probably ought to address
hearing, nothing.
Determine a specific time period for these uses. The
Okay.
problem is a general definition of temporary is almost impossible to write.
Well, I understand that,
And so-
I understand that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking about it.
Yeah, and I understand.
Because I can see a real problem with temporary. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it could last
They were
years.
doing the show that we stopped just before it went to production was 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That would be temporary.
Okay.
And that would have been permitted here, but they would have had to take the structure down.
With a real temporary, acknowledge what temporary would be, a couple of days. And it's in one of the subdivisions here. That would be approved with no public hearing. I'd be really kind of upset to find they're shooting in the vacant lot next door a full-fledged movie production over there, sets and everything going on. I had no opportunity to agree, disagree, voice my concerns or anything. That would concern me. And with this, public, the neighbors, the subdivision, the homeowners association has nothing to say about it. Doesn't really seem fair or right to me. How do we justify telling the subdivision they came and asked for a movie set and we're going to let them have it?
They are able to do it now without the set. They're able to film now in that vacant lot. There's no ordinance that says they can't go and film right now. They're doing it now. They're renting houses to do shoots.
Well, then
Mr. I understand you're just. That's a different issue. If the parish wants to tackle that issue, we're not proposing it be done here. We're trying to address a specific issue that is recurring. That issue has not become recurring. We have discussed it. And at what point do you not everything requires a public hearing.
No.
Everything, if this goes into effect, it would not require a public hearing. You're correct.
And that's part of the.
And not
of this.
everything should require a public hearing.
I don't disagree with that, but something that's going to be a structure next to mine, I would think a public hearing would be nice. I think if I had the business next door to this and they were putting up a permanent location, I sure would like to have something to say about this, but this becomes a use of right in every commercial zoning.
And we have use of rights going up without public hearing every day.
Well, I'm just not sure this should be one of them.
Yeah, that was called conditional uses.
No, what we have now, we have the list, and this is adding to that list something, a use of right in every commercial zoning classification we have. And it's a use of right temporarily, which is a word that I think is very bad, in every residential zoning. It seems to be a little overreaching to me, and it worries me.
Commissioner Dougherty?
Sidney, maybe I'm just missing it, but who is the chief building official?
Kenny Wortman.
Okay, so we do have a person in place and everything to oversee this?
Yeah, and what we've done in the past is on situations where it does have this kind of call to be made, not necessarily with movie sets, he will contact the state fire marshal and they'll discuss what the state's policy is. The state's policy generally on these things is they grant an exemption for movie sets.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Casabon?
Yes, I think the procedure that most of the film companies have used, and they did film 2 to 3 weeks, Joe Dirt 2, across from my house, and they have notification up and down that, bigger signs than what the parish has for zoning cases. They let the public be very aware. As far as permanent structures, they have people that go out and they find things and buildings and barns, which they use the barn across the road, that they just add to, the set to that. And it's all dealing with money. And our parish is very rich in a lot of these structures and things that they look for, that I'm not concerned that they're going to go out and spend the money to build a barn on that property and so on. That I think this is handling it the best that we have a handle on what's going on, what's permanent, and I think we would know more through this process than we would any other process. So I commend the parish for thinking about it.
Commissioner Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have absolutely no problem with this being an administrative permit. I think it's serving a purpose. The only concern that was brought up, I shouldn't say the only concern, but the main concern that was brought up by Commissioner Matthews is that the definition of temporary. And I'm very comfortable with the staff making that determination, because each case is going to be different. If they're filming for 2 weeks, that's one thing. If they're filming for 90 days, that's another. As long as there's a mechanism at your level, the staff level, to ensure that an administrative permit has an expiration.
Yeah, and in fact, Helen pointed out she has a copy of the administrative permit, and it does have a start and end date. And what we'll need to do is administratively make sure that we make sure that's filled in and enforce it. Because if us putting it in there, if we don't enforce it, is
and if we have some assurances that it's going to be enforced, that satisfies my concern about the definition of temporary. Thank you.
We have Commissioner Matthews.
So you all going to have in your procedures, when you deal with these people, to tell them that there is a start and end date, and you all will be telling them what we expect that to be?
Well, what we'll do is we'll ask them what their start and end date is. And, in most of the administrative permits, we have set time periods. They are set time periods. Shrimping, the shrimp sales on the side of the road or during shrimping season. You can't haul in outside of shrimping season. You can't haul in shrimp, sell it on the side of the road. Christmas tree sales are from this date to this date. We can look at that, but I think there may be some flexibility that we need to try and work on, because we don't know how long some of these shoots are going to be. Is it going to be 3 days on Chris Singletary Road because of a car chase out in the middle of nowhere, or is it going to be 6 weeks? Anytime we draw that hard line, there's always somebody on the outside that nobody has a problem with. If we draw it at 6 weeks, somebody comes in at 7. And everybody says, well, what's the big deal? A bunch of bureaucrats. Where's that line? So we'll try, and it becomes a problem, we'll come back and amend the ordinance. That's what we're doing here.
Okay.
If it becomes an issue, we have no problem with coming back and fixing our ordinance if we've missed something.
We have a motion by Commissioner Casabon and a second by Commissioner Richard to approve. Please vote. Motion carries. ZC 15-07-056, existing zoning NC6 Public, Cultural, or Recreational District. Proposed zoning I-2 Industrial District. The parcel 4.61 acres. The petitioner Jeffrey Shane. The owner JFS Business Park LLC. The parcel is located on the north side of Johnny F. Smith Avenue, west of Johnny Lane, Ward 9, District 14. Staff.
Considering that the site is mostly surrounded by I-2 Industrial District, staff does not have any objection to the request and would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Manella. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm in Covington. I represent the owner and petitioner, JF Business Park LLC. You may not remember specifically, but I came before you in 2013 and asked that this property be zoned NC6. At the time, my client, Mr. Gene, who owns an industrial park there, had a baseball athletic training facility in one of the buildings, and it was believed that they were going to develop a park, a field, if you will, outdoor training. That obviously did not come to fruition. I'm happy to say that tenant is still in the area, but at a different location on Highway 11. So we have an opportunity now to continue to develop the park and develop it in an I-2 manner. I think if you look at the vicinity map and listen to Ms. Lambert's staff report, it makes sense why it should go back to I-2. If any of you have questions, I'll be glad to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to support? Is there anyone who wishes to oppose? Hearing none, I close it to the public. I bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve, second by Commissioner Casabon. Commissioner Dougherty.
Jeff, on access to this property, looking at the aerial and the drawing and everything here, I'm just not seeing any real access to this piece of property.
We're going to probably incorporate it into one or more of the other lots and come back through a resub effort.
Okay, and as far as protecting the waterway, that's going to be done?
Yes, as you know, Bayou Vincent runs through that area, so we're mindful of the restraints that we have as it relates to Bayou Vincent, just as we have observed those through the years with the development of the park, and we intend to do that as well. If you look at the aerial, which you're probably looking at now, I'm assuming, it gives you a pretty good idea that significant, the westerly portion of this property really is, if it's not unusable, it will be minimal as to what can be done with it.
Right.
So we certainly intend to keep conservation in mind as we put this parcel into commerce.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Randolph, a second by Commissioner Casabon. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I ask for a vote. Motion for approval has passed. ZC 15-07-057, existing zoning, HC2 Highway Commercial District, proposed zoning, HC2 Highway Commercial District and Manufactured Housing Overlay. The parcel, 12,000 square feet. The petitioner, Don A. Dufresne. The owner, Nelson P. Dufresne. The parcel is located on the south side of Maryland Drive, east of Old Spanish Trail, being 106 Maryland Drive, Slidell, Ward 8, District 13. Staff?
Staff doesn't have any objection to the request, considering that most of the lots located along Maryland Drive are developed with manufactured homes, and at this time, staff would like to recommend approval of the request.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here or anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Do you wish to speak in favor, sir? Or yes. Please approach the podium, state your name and address.
Nelson P. Dufresne, 110 Marlin Drive. I was just trying to get a manufactured home to be able to set it up next to my brother, which is handicapped. And basically, that's all I was trying to do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Hearing none, I close it to the public. I bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Dougherty.
Mr. Dufresne, this is zoned commercial, and you're just going to bring a mobile home in on the property and live in it? Is that what I'm to understand? You come to the mic.
Yes, sir. It's all residential area, and it's all mobile homes in the area.
Right.
I don't know how it got zoned to commercial.
Okay.
It's all houses, you know, and mobile homes.
Okay. Well, that's what I was a little bit confused on, is bringing a mobile home in. What are you going to be selling out of it in an HC2?
I'm going to be living in it.
Okay. Thank you.
All righty.
Commissioner Matthews.
Helen, residence in HC2 is permitted? Okay. Why is this entire street zoned HC2 when everything on that street looks to be residential? I don't have any problem with what this gentleman wants to do. I just think the base zoning is probably wrong.
It was approved by the council like that through the comprehensive rezoning. That's how the councilmen of the area at that time, which I'm not sure if this is the same because the boundaries have moved, but you know, that's how it was introduced and approved.
Wouldn't that cause some problems if any of these people needed to sell or refinance or any of those things, that it's zoned not for residential, really?
No, because it's the HC2 allows for single-family residences.
It just seems to be something we missed in the comprehensive rezoning, and we ought to go back and fix that.
Would anyone care to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Matthews to approve, second by Commissioner Dougherty. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for a vote. Motion carries. ZC 15-07-058, existing zoning, A4 single-family residential district, A6 multiple family residential district, and NC2 indoor retail and service district. Proposed zoning, A7 multifamily residential district, and NC5 retail and service district. The parcel, 12.5 acres. The petitioner, Mark Silvetti. The owner, Merrimont Properties, LLC. The parcel is located on the south side of Brewster Road, east of River Chase Drive, Ward 1, District 1. Staff?
The request consists of an addition of 2.89 acres of A7 zoning to what was previously approved last month, the 18.51 acre parcel that was rezoned to A7 at last month's meeting. They're proposing to add 2.89 acres of A7 zoning. And to the west of it, they're trying to increase the zoning of the property going from NC4 from NC2 to NC5, and staff would like to recommend approval of the request.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? If you please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Townsend Underhill with Sterling Properties, 109 North Park Boulevard in Covington. This is the continuation of a matter that, it's a new case obviously, but it's a continuation of a matter that you all heard in April. Regarding the rezoning of this property. And ultimately, there was a resolution that was come to maintain an existing A4 buffer along the southern property boundary between this property and our adjoining neighbors. And as part of that, the A7 was accepted and approved by the council on the portion that was previously applied for. And so this is what I'm going to call an add-on. So there's an existing 15 some odd acres that has been approved, and this 2.89 acres would take that total zoning to just shy of 18 acres of A7 zoning. We have put in place a number of private deed restrictions that's in favor of the River Club development. And Matt Bennett is here tonight to speak on this behalf. This includes a restriction for a number of units to 299 units within this project, although the A7 would allow more than 299 units strictly by density. And it has height restrictions, the site plan restrictions, some additional tree buffers, and some other things. So what we're doing here is we're taking a portion of the A4, a small portion, about an acre, acre and a half, and creating A7, and then we're taking the remaining portion that runs along the northern side along Brewster Road that is currently A6, which would allow for multifamily. We've now deed restricted that against ever being multifamily, so we're taking that zoning and converting it to an NC5 zoning, which is consistent with that agreement, so that it will not be multifamily zoning or multifamily in the future. So didn't make sense for that to remain a multifamily zone when we've now deed restricted that against being a multifamily property. So this is to try and kind of clean up the rest of this piece here, since this portion of it was not previously advertised for.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak in favor? Please come to the podium, state your name and address, and if you haven't, fill out a speaker's card.
My name is Matt Bennett. I'm speaking on behalf of River Club Development. As Townsend said, we've come to an agreement with Sterling Properties. Last time we were up here, we had our differences, but as complicated or to decipher what the rezonings are, I am here on behalf of River Club to support them. Anything else?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public. I bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Lauren.
Yes, thank you, Dave. If you look at the plot plan that's in our packet, you can see that the things that we typically get into sometimes and start talking about suggesting that there be deed restrictions, they're putting them on the flats. So there's been a lot of conversation. I haven't been a part of it, but I know that our councilman has, between the developer and the parties, and they've worked out a compromise that they feel that they're comfortable with. And it seems like a very reasonable development for the property, and I would like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lawrence, second by Commissioner Davis. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a vote. Motion to approve passes. ZC 15-07-059, existing zoning, CB1 Community-Based Facilities District. Proposed zoning, MD2 Medical Clinic District. The parcel, 13.72 acres. The petitioner, Kenneth C. Lapicolo. The owner, Focus Worldwide Television Network, Inc. The parcel is located on the east side of Louisiana Highway 1081, north of Thibodeau Road, south of Smith Road, Ward 3, District 2. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the site to be developed with institutional uses. Staff doesn't have any objection to the request and would like to recommend approval of the proposed MD2 designation.
Thank you. Mr. Marone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of Mr. Lapicolo. The property in question this evening is 13.72 acres. It's located along Stafford Road north of Covington. We're proposing under the MD2 zoning for a senior care facility on the site. Historically, this was the location of the St. Scholastica Priory. And the nuns of the Order of St. Benedict actually came to this area in the late 1800s, first starting St. Scholastica School in Covington. Around 1940 or so, they acquired this property out off of Stafford Road and established their priory there. where they operated the Priory as a daughter house. Many nuns were housed there until the facility finally closed in about 1998. Since that time, this portion of the property that is subject to this request has been vacant. I think it's important to note the surrounding uses. With the Priory in the center, to our south, we have Tammany subdivision, which was a part of this original property, but is now a senior age-restricted community. To our west is a skilled nursing facility, Village in the Oaks, and to our east is St. Benedict's Catholic Church. So I would suggest to you that the medical district zoning that we're proposing is not inconsistent with the past use of the property and is also very compatible with the surrounding uses we see out in that area today. As you know, the permitted uses in the medical districts are very limited, very narrow, and I would suggest that if you look at those, really given what's around us, that the medical district permitted uses are more compatible than the CB1 that is there now. Certainly this property would not really be conducive to a golf course or recreational facilities or something like that, where it is between Tammany subdivision, the church, and a skilled nursing facility. The plan is to utilize the 35,000 square foot Priory building that is still in place, to refurbish that and to create units out of that building initially. That building is a single-story building, and it will remain largely intact as it has been, other than major renovations to the interior. With the senior care facility, there's minimal impact as far as traffic and noise, since the residents here will, by and large, be more of assisted living type uses. Very limited driving, very limited traffic for a site of this type. Noise is minimal, almost nothing. And quite frankly, the vacant building has been a bit of a problem over the years. It has attracted kids that have vandalized and otherwise been a bit of a nuisance in the area. The sheriff has had to come numerous times, so it would be good to bring the facility back into commerce in some manner. We believe this would be an appropriate manner, compatible with our surrounding uses, and as staff recommended, we would respectfully request your approval of our MD2 zoning.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak in favor of this? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Please approach the podium and state your name and address.
My name is Lydia Gallo, and I'm at 254 Lords Lane in Terra Maria. Presently, I'm the president of the board of the Homeowners Association, and I am not here to speak in opposition to the MD2. I think, just like Mr. Maroney said and Mr. Lopicola said, that that would be a great thing for the community to have that as a health clinic or assisted living nursing home and that thing. Our concern from the residents is the traffic situation and the road situation. We haven't heard on this about if they're going to put another road entrance and exit for the facility, or are they going to use the present road? Right now we have one road that goes in, a blacktop road, that's for Terra Maria. And then there's a road that we use to go out that everybody uses, but we don't own that road, we just have a right-of-way. It's privately owned. And the road that goes in we're required to maintain that and to fix that at times. So our concern really is that we do think, because of the increased population, we're not sure how many residents will occupy this medical facility, but we know that there will be staff going in and out, the occupants, visitors. I know that it's going to have a kitchen and linen. You know, these type of facilities need delivery trucks coming with the food and the linen, and, you know, maybe ambulances from time to time. I just feel, and the residents feel, that some other type of roadway needs to be, you know, our roadway needs to be separate from their roadway, because I think it's going to be I do think it's going to be a lot of traffic. I know they don't think that maybe it would, but I would recommend that the developer maybe put a plan in for us on the roadway. Y'all look at that. I mean, y'all more professional and could look and see, you know, how large this thing's going to be and whether you think there's going to be excess traffic, you know, and those roads that we have there now that we're going to have to be using together is enough, you know, for the facility before you decide one way or the other, you know, on this. We just want more knowledge, you know, and specifics on how they're going to handle the traffic.
And your point's well taken, Ms. Gall. The fact is zoning, the first order of business would be to grant an appropriate zoning. And then what you're speaking of specifically is vetted throughout the planning process. And as we come back and the developer would come to us through the various planning steps, those questions are absolutely valid, and the developer would be in a position to answer those questions as far as traffic flows, as far as ingress and egress, and all of the concerns that you would have relative to that. And again, that's through the planning process, which is separate than the zoning process.
Okay, I was not aware of that. I didn't know if it got approved today
No, it's a
as
good
that,
question.
then that we didn't have any, you know, way of coming back and, you know, re-entering.
Right. There's actually a three-step planning process,
Okay.
so that'll give you and the developer plenty of time to vet those concerns you have.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Hearing none, I close it to the public and I bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Matthews.
Helen, would this come before us in planning?
Not that I'm aware of, unless if they're creating a subdivision, but I'm not aware that it would come back in front of
That was a
planning.
concern. This, if we approve this, this may well be the last time we see it, and wouldn't
Yeah.
be subject to the planning
It wa-
necessarily.
It would be required to provide a traffic study because of the size of the property, but
But what roads they would have or wouldn't have or anything like that would not come before us.
no, sir.
Paul? Since it is very probable you will not come back to us in planning, what type of roadway are you all looking at?
Well, a couple of points with regards to the access. If you look in your packet, I think you'll notice that this parcel actually connects on its own directly to Stafford Road. So we have direct access through no access that is currently being used by the subdivision to Stafford Road. So we would have the ability to have our single access point totally separate and apart. The plan would be, and certainly we will stay in contact with the folks at Tammany about that, is to establish a much larger boulevard that would have a one-way in and a one-way out for this facility and for Tammany subdivision. That's all, that is owned by the developer, the portion that is used there. This portion, the 80-foot access way, is with the Priory parcel. So if we had to, we have the ability and we have the property within the Priory parcel to have singular access. We think the access would be better with a much larger boulevard that would service both facilities, and we have the ability to do that as well with the property.
And the developer actually owns the current entranceway into Tammany?
Correct. That's correct.
And they have a...
But they have a predial servitude over
Right,
that.
okay.
Absolutely.
So the piece of property that they're using, the current thinking is to make that, incorporate that with the other entrance and to make it a boulevard.
A much larger boulevard, yes.
Although we can't, if we rezone this, well, that wouldn't come back to us either, would it?
It probably would not. It may, because of the nature of the building, we may need to have a traffic study done at the permit stage. Wouldn't come back to you here, but it would be something that the staff would look at the building permit stage.
Okay. Well, staff and Terry, there's nothing we could do to assist the residents to make sure that their concerns about their entrance is addressed? Or is there?
Besides the required traffic study.
But the traffic study would not necessarily deal with the boulevard or not being a boulevard or using their entrance way. None of those questions would necessarily be addressed.
Well, it will deal with the access point to Stafford Road and whether it needs to be a boulevard, whether it has the capacity to handle the ingress and egress. So as part of that, if we were proposing a boulevard that would take care of Terra Marie and this facility, then to determine that capacity, we would have to put all of those units into that equation under the study, I believe. So that is something that the staff would look at. It wouldn't come back to this commission, but it would be in the study itself.
Okay. I think one or more of the residents have some questions, and I'd like to address those, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
And you may, Mr. Matthews, 1 second. I think council would make a comment.
Paul, so what would be the number of residents that we're looking at in this facility?
Under the existing building would have no more than about 25 to 30 units at the most. Now, some of those would be single occupancy, some would be double for a husband and a wife, but very few, if any of those, would have vehicles. Really, the only traffic that would be generated would be, as Ms. Gallo noted, would be staff that would come in and out and deliveries. That's really it.
What was the capacity before when it was the Priory? Do you know how many nuns were located there?
I don't know.
I know it's
the
many
answer to
years
that.
ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to guess at
Many
that.
of them didn't have cars, so that wasn't the problem, the driving of the road.
Mr. Matthews, if you'd like to address the public.
Yes. The gentleman in the back, if you have some comments, I'd like to hear them.
Thank you so much. My name is James Henry. I reside at 253 Lord's Lane in Terra Maria subdivision. I would like to reiterate what Lydia had said. We're not opposed to this, Paul. We're really not at all. Yes, we do have a concern about traffic, and what has not been brought up, and I realize it's not germane to this issue, but is the residential development that is supposed to take place. And I'm talking, as I understand it, they'll probably be developing 100, 200 homes, or am I off on this? But there will be a residential development, and whatever infrastructure we put in place now, I think is what would be planned to serve that entire community, and it would be a little much, I think. So we're just asking that consideration be given to separate access and egress to our subdivision, and let the other things take care as they see fit.
Well, you've heard the developer's representative that what their plans are for the ingress and egress to their development plus Terra Maria. And I personally think that in knowing the developer and particularly his representative, I don't think that they would be making those representations if they hadn't fully well intended to carry those through. And I think those things would take care of the problems you all are expressing today. Now, if there is further development in the area, that probably would have to come back through planning. Is that correct, Helen?
Well, I think it's already zoned.
Well, but if they try to develop it, then it probably will come back to us in planning.
Okay.
Those questions about ingress and egress and traffic and all those things will be brought up and discussed at that time.
Right.
If they further develop all those residential units you were talking about. But I really think that what they're suggesting for this is quite good, and is something we really need in this parish. And I think they will be, if they give you guys a boulevard, I think it'll be a nice upgrade to what you currently have. And you might well not have to be paying to repair it if it needs repair. So I think it might well be a win-win situation for you all, and I'd make a motion to approve.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Not yet, ma'am. We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Matthews, a second by Commissioner Dougherty. Commissioner Casabon. No question. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul, I have a question. There was a comment that was made by, I think, Ms. Gallo, that they pay for the upkeep of that road. It's not obviously a parish road, correct? So
Right.
how is that going to work with who's going to maintain this road or this new boulevard? Is that something they're paying for? Can you explain that to me?
Currently,
Thank you.
currently they are the only people that are using that. And so as part of their homeowners association dues, that entrance roadway is maintained like the interior streets of Tammany. If and when that entrance is changed, if the boulevard is created where it becomes a shared boulevard, then there'll have to be an agreement worked out between the association and the assisted living facility to share that cost in a reasonable manner. It certainly wouldn't be fair to suggest that they should bear the cost for somebody else to be utilizing their entrance. The entrance is owned by the developer. They pay it through their homeowners association dues. To the extent that there are others that will be using it from the assisted living facility, they will have to pay their toll or fair share of that portion as well.
Thank you. So in other words, there are going to be further discussions.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ms. Gall, you wish to make a comment? If you would, come to the podium to do so.
He partially answered part of my question about maintaining this new boulevard. But I also wanted to make sure that I understood where this boulevard's going to be, where the entrance is now. You're going to widen that and make that an in and out for the home. Is that the part that you're talking about that's going to be widened and make it an in and out for everybody?
Yes.
The one we go in off of Stafford?
This is where you go in now. What you would do is ultimately it would loop back and come out here.
Oh,
So it'd be
so what about the exit road we use right now that we just have the right-of-way of, that we don't
right here,
own?
right here. That would probably go away in favor of the much
So
larger
this is where
and
we're going to
wider.
come in and we're going to go out. And they'll have something that veers off to the Priory?
ma'am. Yes,
'Cause
ma'am.
they'll have to shoot off this way?
Yes, ma'am.
And when Phase 3 comes in, they're going to shoot off in a different direction?
Yes, they'll access separately. That's correct.
Okay. That was mainly it, since we are maintaining that road. And if they're going to widen it, you know, who's going to absorb the cost, you know, in the maintenance of it if we're all going to use that road? And they have to bring that before their plans for this to what you said, the traffic committee, or?
The traffic study?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll perform a
And
traffic
so it would be in
study.
writing what they're going to do?
Not from the traffic study would take into consideration the impact that would have. That potentially would be a dialogue between you and the developer, which this commission would not have any.
So it's just between them and us to
Yeah,
get in writing that's what
That
they're
would be,
gonna
again,
provide?
between you. The commission does not interest themselves directly into that. That would be between the developer and the homeowners in the vicinity.
Okay.
I would, encourage you to have a dialogue with them.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the public will have access to a copy of the traffic study if they wish to review it from our office.
Good, and that'll come through staff, correct, Helen? Great. Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any further discussion by the commission? I would ask for a vote. Motion to approve passes. ZC 15-07-060, existing zoning, I-2 Industrial District. Proposed zoning, HC2 Highway Commercial District. The parcel, 1.5769 acres. The petitioner, Paul R. Richard, Jr. The owner, RDG Properties, LLC. The parcel is located on the north side of Powell Drive, south of Interstate 12, west of Doss Drive. Ward 9, District 14. Staff?
Staff doesn't have any objection to the request, considering that the site was previously zoned HC2 and is directly abutting an existing industrial business, and staff would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Mr. Shane?
Thank you. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm in Covington. I represent the owner and petitioner, RDG Properties, LLC. The case is, in my view, as simple as the staff report suggests. Property was initially, I think, zoned C2 back in '99, then became HC2 as a result of comprehensive. A few years ago, my clients changed the zoning to I2. Obviously, it is now undeveloped. There are no structures on it. We have a prospect who hopes to make use of the property, but they need an HC2 zoning. So we respectfully request that you recommend HC2 zoning to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public. I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve, a second by Commissioner Matthews. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for a vote. Motion to approve passes. Is there any old business to come before the commission? Is there any new business? Yes, sir.
If you'd permit me to make a comment, Bill McHugh with the St. Tammany Farmer, I would like to thank you all for including these aerial photographs in each of the items, and I hope you will continue to do so. It makes it much easier to understand what we're looking at. Thank you.
Commissioner
Helen,
Matthews.
thank you.
Thank you to the staff.
Very good. A motion to adjourn.